Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world. And so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. And don't forget to go and get yourself an effervescent drink or something lovely and warm, because I've got a lovely story for you tonight. We're going to continue with part 2. So if you haven't heard part 1, definitely go back to it, because you don't want to miss out on the lovely story. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's continue with part 2 of our story.
He's not my favourite toy, I insisted. I like Miranda best. Miranda's my favourite toy.
My mother was so angry. She walked over to Miranda, deliberately yanked off her little head, tossing it into the wastepaper basket and saying, "Mr. Scotty is your favourite toy from now on. I don't ever want to see him lying on the floor like this again, or I will be very upset. Do you understand, Charlotte?" I nodded and said,
"Yes, Mummy. Mr. Scotty is my favourite toy."
"Good girl. That's what I like to hear. Now wash your face and come down to breakfast. I've made your favourite, blueberry pancakes." I like pancakes, but my favourite was porridge with honey. But I dutifully nodded, as by now I knew better. When my mother left the bedroom, I dashed over to the bin to retrieve Miranda's decapitated head, but I couldn't fit it back on her body. So I cried and cried. My mother had killed my best friend. She had spitefully murdered my doll in cold blood. I didn't like my new mum for wantonly doing that. Murderers are not good people. But then I reminded myself that I had unintentionally been responsible for murdering my mother. But at least it had not been by design. And in my opinion, that made a huge difference. I resented the fact that my parents were autonomously pretending that I was their dead daughter Charlotte. Did no one like me for being me? My father and sisters wished I had not been born, as I had murdered my mother during childbirth. My new mother and dad electively wanted me to become their new dead daughter. And whenever I providently acted out of character, my mother would become snappy towards me and say, "You're not behaving correctly, Charlotte. You'd never have done that a year ago, would you?" She was rather like a film producer, telling me, the actress, that I was not playing the part appropriately and needed to adopt new mannerisms and quirky eccentric habits to make the role more believable. If I was desirous for my new parents to be happy at all, I had to become a carbon copy or clone of their deceased daughter. I remember asking my new mother how their daughter Charlotte had died, and she said to me, "My daughter is not dead. Where did you get that idea from? You are Charlotte. You're not dead, are you? You're very much alive, are you not?" I nodded, knowing it didn't do well to upset my new mother, as I didn't like it when she wore that sad face, which she always adopted when she wasn't pleased with me. But I knew I was not Charlotte. I was Mereldith, and I hated having to adopt a new alien name that I didn't even like and certainly didn't become me. Sometimes I would do things that would irritate her considerably, like playing with my food on my plate if I didn't like it. She'd become outraged and inflamed and say, "Where does this strange enigmatic habit of yours come from, Charlotte? You've never exhibited such outlandish behaviour before. You used to have such impeccable table manners. What happened? Don't let your good behaviour slip, and don't you ever eat with your mouth open like that. It's not becoming for a young lady. You never ate with your mouth open before. It's very unsightly seeing you chew your food while you eat. No one wants to watch you churning it up with your mouth like that. It's very off-putting and exceedingly distasteful."
"Sorry, Mummy,"
I'd say.
"I won't do it again, I promise."
I was expected to jump into their bed on a Sunday morning, to sit between two of my parents as they listened to the radio, and I didn't like doing that very much. But as Charlotte had done this every Sunday morning herself, I was expected to do the very same thing. My father wore a black mat on his chest. It was so hairy, and my mother always had plastic curlers in her hair. I was never comfortable sitting between the two of them. My mother would click away at her knitting needles, telling me she was making me a new pink sweater covered with fabric flowers or pom-poms. She always made lovely sweaters, and the little girls at church were envious of them and would play with the pom-poms on my sweater and say, "Mummy, I
I want a sweater just like Charlotte's.
Every Sunday before lunch we would go to church, and I remember the strange looks people gave my new mother when she introduced me to them as Charlotte. "Hello, Charlotte. It's very nice to meet you," they'd say. I overheard one woman saying to her friend, "You're right. It's decidedly odd, isn't it? This new girl they've adopted, they're calling her Charlotte as well. And she looks strikingly similar to their original daughter, the one they lost. The same strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. It's rather weird, isn't it? I think the parents are clearly in denial. They refuse to admit that their real daughter is dead. People can be like that, you know. They're trying to turn this poor little girl into the daughter they lost. It's tragic, if you ask me, really tragic, but especially for this poor little girl, having to act out like their child. It's not right. It's really rather creepy." "How did their daughter die?" came the other woman's voice. "Wasn't it a drowning accident of some kind?" "Yes, you're right about that. I'm afraid it's a sad story. They found her drowned, lying upside down in the pond. I gather they filled in the pond after that. But I mean, how do you ever get over losing a child? It's so desperately tragic. Let's just say water and little children don't mix, do they? I gather the little girl was taking her plastic dolphin for a swim and ended up falling in the water, and of course she couldn't swim herself, so that was that. The parents tried to save her, but it was too late. She was already gone. How dreadful. I do empathise with them. It's not easy to lose a child, and my heart grieves for them. But I'm sorry, expecting your adopted child to fill your deceased child's shoes is insane. No two kids are the same. I know, I've got 4 of my own, and they couldn't be more different if they tried. And the way Mrs. Arrowmont is behaving, she's acting like this is Charlotte risen from the dead. In the beginning, my new parents never let me play outdoors without being supervised. They lived on tender hooks if I was outside. I think the tormenting memory of losing their daughter so tragically, when she was playing outdoors by the pond, meant they were afraid of that same bad thing happening to me. But there was no pond anymore. Slowly and surely my mother's stringent rules began to drop, when she discovered she was pregnant and was actually expecting a baby. "You're going to have a new brother or sister," she told me. "Isn't that wonderful, Charlotte? The good Lord has shown me mercy, like Hannah in the Bible. For a long time I thought that I could not have a baby, but now I'm pregnant." The grateful tears streamed down her face. I wondered why she was crying when she claimed to be happy. I decided that adults could be very strange. My new father took me out to celebrate that day. He held my hand and we took a shortcut through the woodgrove, where we were able to get to the local town. I knew the town very well. It wasn't far away from my original old family home. My sister had walked me to the town on many occasions, and I remembered the way very well. If only I could go back home now, I might have nicer things living with the Arrowmonters, and living in a bigger, better house. But I didn't like having to be someone I wasn't, and I so missed my dad and my sister. I longed to be back with them. I looked around carefully at all the people bustling around the town, to see if I could see any sign of my dad or sister, but they weren't in town today. But then it was a Tuesday, and my father never shopped on Tuesdays. I did remember that. My new father took me to the sweet shop and told me to choose some sweets for myself.
"Can I have anything I want?"
I asked him with a big smile.
"Charlotte, you can have anything you like. You're a very good girl, and you've made your mummy and daddy very happy. And I'm very pleased we have another bun in the oven, so you can have whatever you want. I am celebrating today."
I looked at my father in bewilderment, secretly affirming to myself that he didn't have a full grasp of the English language. I chose cherry and strawberry gumdrops, candy cigarettes, licorice pipes, chocolate cigarettes, grape laces, assorted Jolly Ranchers, and some M&Ms. I thought all my Christmases had come at once, and as far as I was concerned, my new mother should get pregnant more often, as then I'd get candy and ice cream whenever I wanted, and she wouldn't make me eat all my vegetables. Besides, I noticed that since she'd fallen pregnant, she wore her happy face more often. One day I came into the house, having played happily in the backyard. I brought in a shoebox filled with 6 frogs that I released in the living room to watch them bouncing, jumping and leaping around my mother's posh furnishings and the gleaming oak wood floors. I loved the frogs. They were phenomenal. They could jump so far. They were masterful athletes.
Look, Mummy, I cried out happily. Look how far the frogs can jump.
My mother was absolutely furious. It would seem her pregnancy had given her a short fuse, and she would wear her sad or cross face much more often. My mother let out a shriek. "You wicked girl, Charlotte! You wicked, wicked girl! Why would you do such a dreadful thing? What do you mean by bringing frogs into the house, Charlotte?" She dashed into the kitchen to retrieve a broom and was trying to kill my frogs. Luckily, they escaped her grasp.
"Please don't murder my frogs, Mummy. They're nice," I said,
quickly gathering them safely back into the shoebox. I couldn't allow my mother to hurt any of them, and judging by her irate expression, she had murder on her mind. "They're dreadful creatures, Charlotte. What on earth is wrong with you? Why can't you be like my real daughter? You're nothing like her. My Charlotte who died, she wasn't at all like you. She'd never ever bring frogs into the house like this. She was such a lovely, lovely, well-behaved girl, a real princess. You're nothing like my real daughter, nothing at all. You don't belong here. I wish you'd go back to where you came from." I didn't realise my mother was just having what adults would probably deem as a blow-up, as she was having a rough day with morning sickness and low energy levels. So she probably didn't mean what she was saying to me, as everything was overwhelming her and getting on her nerves. But I took my mother at her word and decided that if she didn't want me any longer, the feeling was mutual. I didn't want her either, and her desire to premeditatively kill my frogs had been the final straw for me. My mother was the murderer of the worst possible kind, as she had intended to kill. And if I hadn't been efficiently nimble with my fingers, she would have had 6 dead frogs on her conscience. But I doubted that she'd be bothered by that at all. It would seem my mother didn't have a moral compass of any kind. I would find my way back home. All I needed to do was to take the shortcut through the forest, go to the small town, and then find my way back to my quaint little mountain home that I missed with all my heart. I had ambled over to the small town often enough with my sister holding my hand from our mountain home, where she'd buy me candies at the old sweet shop, with all the glass bottles in the window, where you could get 10 candies for only 5 cents, that the nice lady in the shop would put in a pink and white striped paper bag for me, and she'd give me 2 extra for being a very good girl. I preferred this sweet shop to the other one that my new dad took me to, as I could choose my own individual sweets, one by one, that I wanted for myself. And I always picked out the special sweets with the prettiest colours, because they were terribly nice. You could suck them, and they stayed in your mouth a lot longer than the grape laces and licorice pipes that got eaten far too quickly. When my mummy was not looking that day, I quickly found a bag which I put my murdered doll's head and body parts into, along with a sweater and a cheese muffin that I stole from the kitchen, in case I got hungry on my journey. I'd intended to have a funeral service for Miranda, my doll, to bury her head in the ground, but I hadn't got around to doing that quite yet, as I knew my mother didn't like me getting my hands dirty. When she saw me digging around in the dirt, pulling out strawberries, she rushed me to the kitchen sink with a look of disgust on her face. She scrubbed my nails and hands so vigorously that they began to bleed. It had really hurt, and I started to cry. My mother had slapped me across the cheek. "Little girls must not go playing in the dirt. It's very unbecoming for a little princess to be covered in filth." I liked my old mountain home, as I could get as dirty as I liked there, play around in the mud, climb trees, ride my little bike. But I wasn't allowed to get dirty in Mrs. Araminta's house. She said princesses always were meant to look pretty, and should never really play outdoors if they could possibly help it. I could hear my new mother in the toilet. She was making horrible noises and guttural sounds. I crept down the staircase. I pushed open the back kitchen door and trotted across the mown lawn, through the flowery meadow, towards the trees. I knew exactly where I was going. Well, I thought I did at the time. It was a magnificently beautiful day, with lots of warm sunshine. I liked it when the weather was warm like this, It felt really nice on my skin. I liked the forest too, as there were so many big trees there, covered with pretty leaves, and the sunlight would dance through the branches and make the whole forest twinkle. I liked the way the birds would sing in the trees, and they made such beautiful music. There were so many charming animals that would look at me in the woods, like chipmunks and squirrels. I think the squirrels in the woodgrove liked me, because they were always eating their acorns in front of me, while they watched me. I'd talk to them, and I'm sure they knew exactly what I was saying.
I'm going back to my real home, I told Mr. Squirrel. My new mummy doesn't want me any more, because I'm not the same as the other girl, Charlotte, her daughter that died. I don't like her, because she murdered my doll. And she tried to murder 6 frogs.
I pulled out the severed head to show the squirrel the macabre evidence of what my mother had so callously done. He continued to eat his acorn, but I got the sense he was very disgusted, and also thought my mother was vindictively cruel for murdering my doll. His dark, soulful eyes looked sympathetic.
I'm going back to my old home, I explained. I murdered my mother, so my father and my sister are very sad, but I want to go back to them. I didn't mean to murder my mother, you see, 'cause I was small. But my new mother deliberately murdered my doll, and that is so different.
I watched the squirrel dashing away. I think he found my story so tragically sad that he just couldn't listen any more. He was so desperately heartbroken. I tried my best to talk to the bunny rabbits, but they would always dart away as fast as they could. I think they were painfully shy. I could understand their feelings, because when I was 3 years old, I was also very shy, just like them. But as I got older, I became a lot more confident. After I'd been walking for a long time, I realised I was lost. I felt very upset because I couldn't find the road that led to the town. So I sat down under the oak tree to cry, as I didn't know how to find that road. It was all very confusing. That was when I saw the hairy lady. I'd never seen a lady like her before, as she was covered in hair, like my teddy bears, very long, so she didn't need to wear clothes, and she was tall and big like a small tree, and her face was pretty, and she had beautiful eyes. She was much nicer than my new mother, and she seemed to really care about me. Even though she didn't speak English, she understood what I was saying, and she literally put me on top of her shoulders, holding down my legs with her hands. They felt so lovely and warm. I'd never seen such big hands before. Her fingers were bigger than sausages. I was so pleased because I love having a horse ride, but she was nicer to ride than a horse. She didn't jolt when she ran. I was giggling so much as I clutched her long hair in my hand like the reins of a horse. I said, "Giddy up! Giddy up!" And she knew I wanted her to go faster, so she moved like the wind. I soon forgot that I was sad, and I began to giggle an awful lot. I couldn't stop laughing. The hairy lady smelt of wood, dirt and pine. I liked her smell an awful lot better. She smelt of the earth after it rains. The kind hairy lady didn't take me to the road as I'd expected she would. Instead, she took me directly to this old wooden cabin that was even more antique-looking than my mountain home. It looked weathered and very run down. The hairy lady put me down gently on the step there. She held me in her arms for a moment, cuddling me tightly to her chest. She was like this giant teddy bear. She was ginormous. She patted me on the back, and then she knocked on the door, but she didn't stay with me. I was sad when she went away. I didn't want her to go. She made me feel safe. The door of the wooden cabin opened, and an old man who looked like Father Christmas opened the door to me.
"Are you lost, little girl?"
he asked me. I nodded. He poured me a glass of lemonade and asked me what my daddy's name was. I tried to remember, thinking very hard. Then it came to me like a flash of light, as my daddy's surname is the same colour of the grass.
My daddy's name is Sidney Green.
The man nodded. He saddled up his horse, and we rode towards my father's cabin. The man said he knew my father well, and knew exactly where he lived. I was very happy about that, but the ride was not as fun as it had been on the nice hairy lady. The man rode to my daddy's cabin, and when he got off his horse he helped me down onto the ground. My father had opened the door with my sister at his side, and when they saw me, they ran towards me, with tears running down their faces. They seemed so happy, so it was really strange that they were crying.
Your little girl was at my front door, the man explained to my father. She is your daughter, is she not, Sidney? That's right, said my father. She is indeed my daughter. Thank you, George, very much. This is very kind of you to bring my daughter home. The man nods. Only a pleasure, Sidney. Very glad to be of help. My sister leads me into the cabin, her eyes filled with tears that are slipping down her cheeks like raindrops on a window pane, and the smile on her face is so large that it almost doesn't fit there. She seems excited and incredibly happy. Would you like some hot chocolate, Meredith? I nod as she prepares me a mug of cocoa. It tastes so lovely, creamy, sweet and warm, and the sound of being called by my real name is even sweeter. What happened? My sister asks. My father is sitting next to me on the other side of the table, and like my sister, he has tears in his eyes and a huge smile on his face. This surprises me an awful lot, as I'd never seen him smile before. I used to make him sad. Now he seems so happy to see me. What happened, sweetheart? Asks my father, reaching out to grab me by my hand. Did you not like living with the Araminters? Did you run away? I open up the plastic bag to show them Miranda, my doll, and the decapitated head. My new mother murdered my doll, I explained. She doesn't like me to get my hands dirty, so I couldn't bury her, so we couldn't have a funeral. And then today she tried to kill 6 frogs. That's very sad, says my sister sympathetically. Why did she do this to your doll? It's a mean thing for her to do. 'Cause she said that I needed to love Scotty best because her daughter loved Scotty best. Who's Scotty? Asked my sister. Scotty is the teddy bear that belonged to her daughter who died, but I didn't like Scotty. His eyes were too big for his face. Their daughter's name was Charlotte. They wanted me to be Charlotte, but I'm not Charlotte. I'm Meredith, and I don't want to be Charlotte. Of course you're Meredith, said my father. That's why we called you that name. It suits you. It belongs to you. But they didn't call me Meredith. They called me Charlotte, but I'm not Charlotte. That's seriously sick, says my father, looking at my sister in horror. Those bloody people were trying to turn our daughter into their dead child that they lost. Now that is not right. Did you like living with the Araminters? Asked my father. Or did you prefer living here with us? I know they have much more money than we do, and they can give you so much more. But we've rarely missed you. We've missed you so very much, Meredith. But you wanted me to go away 'cause I murdered Mummy. My father grabs hold of me. He picks me up so that my legs are wrapped around his waist and my arms are wrapped around his neck. Now you listen to me, my little Meredith. You never killed your mother. Do you understand me? I'm sorry that is what you thought. She was pregnant with you, and the doctors could not save her. But she was very excited about becoming a mother again, and I was so happy about becoming a father. In the beginning we weren't happy, but we came around to the idea about becoming parents again. We both began to warm to the idea of having a late lamb. We were very excited about you. And if you were a girl, you were going to be called Meredith. Your mother loved the name. I admit that I blamed you for your mother dying. I was sad. I loved your mother so terribly much. And when she died, it was easy to blame you for her death. That was very wrong of me. I wanted to blame someone. I blamed God as well, not just you. In truth, I blamed God far more. You see, when you're hurt, Meredith, you lash out at the world because you're angry. When you went away to live at the Araminters, and I saw you getting into her car, I knew in that moment I had made a grievous, monumental mistake. 2 days later, I realized I wanted you back home with us more than anything else in the world. When you went away from home, I realized you were part of your mother, a part of me, a part of your sister, that you were the best thing left behind by your mother for us, and we had overlooked the very best thing in our lives, like a precious jewel that you realize suddenly is really a diamond, when all along you thought it was a piece of costume jewellery. I had handed over the most precious gift to someone else in the world. I was mortified. You see, little Mereldith, I love you so much."
"Daddy's right, Mereldith," says my sister. "We were so gutted. I blame myself, as I thought our lives would be better without you. But it was terrible. We missed you so terribly much, and we cried all the time. Daddy contacted the Araminters at once. We told them we had to have you back. But they told us you were calling them Mummy and Daddy, that you were terribly happy, and you much preferred living with them, and they were spoiling you rotten, giving you your heart's desires."
"We believed them," said my father. "We knew if you were happy, we had to let you go."
"But I wasn't happy. I wanted to be here with you."
My father contacted the Araminters to tell them that I'd run away from their home and returned safely to my mountain home, and that I would be staying with them from now on, and that there was nothing they could do because I was legitimately his daughter. I was so thrilled to be back home, and even happier when my father fixed my doll's head back onto her body again, so that she came back to life, and we didn't have to have a funeral service for her, so I was overjoyed. I so wished I could tell Mr. Squirrel the great news. My story had grieved his heart so very much that he'd run away after he'd eaten his acorn. The following morning, Mrs. Araminta was knocking at our door, after parking her black Buick outside our rustic cabin, that possibly looked like a yard shed to her. She was carrying Mr. Scotty in her hands, and her face was the colour of a bright tomato. She was wearing her angry face, and I was very scared of that face, because bad things happened when she wore that look, like slapping me across the face, scrubbing my fingers until they bled, or hosing me down with ice-cold water.
"Don't be frightened, little Mereldith," said my father, taking my hand in his. "Mrs. Araminta cannot take you away against our will."
Mrs. Araminta stormed into our cabin. She looked like a soldier. She seemed to be marching. My father beckoned for her to sit down on a chair. She looked at our humble home with an expression of contemptuous disgust on her face, as our cabin was not resplendent enough for her. My sister kept our cabin as spotless and clean as a new pin. It was homely, with its mismatched furnishings and homemade curtains, and Mrs. Araminta was not impressed. She heaved a huge sigh, and sat on the edge of a slightly weather-beaten chair, as if she was scared she'd become contaminated by the fabric. "What's this all about? How dare you kidnap our daughter?" she says, glaring at my father with indignant eyes that are as wide as saucers. "Charlotte belongs home with us. I told you she's very happy in her new life, with her new mummy and daddy. Aren't you, Charlotte, sweetheart?" she says, looking at me with a bright big smile on her face. "Look what I brought you, dear. Mr. Scotty," she says, lifting up the bear with the tartan jacket, gold buttons and hideously big bug eyes. She reaches over to where I'm sitting to place Mr. Scotty in my arms, but I throw the teddy across the floor in indignant disgust.
"I hate that teddy."
Mrs. Araminta looks most upset as she gathers Scotty up from the floor in her hands, dusting him off and clutching him closely to her chest. "Charlotte, that wasn't a nice thing to do. Look what you made my daughter do. I can see she's very upset. She'd never ever hurt Mr. Scotty unless she was upset. You are keeping her against her will. She wants to come home with me, where she belongs."
"First of all, Mrs. Araminta, I did not kidnap Mereldith from you. On the contrary, Mereldith ran away from your home because she wasn't happy living with you. If my daughter had been happy with you, she would never have run away from you in the first place. And then under those circumstances, I would have been more than willing for her to stay with you, because that would be her choice, her decision, because she was happy. I miss my daughter so terribly much. She's not happy living with you, and trying desperately to please you by filling your dead daughter's shoes. And that is a dreadful burden to put on a young girl. My daughter is not your dead child. No child is your dead child. You should appreciate that. And she doesn't like being called Charlotte either. Her name is Mereldith."
Mrs. Araminta looks physically stunned. "Did you run away from home yesterday, Charlotte?" she asks me. I nod. "I know Mummy was upset yesterday and said things to you she didn't mean. but I wasn't feeling well. I was sick because of my pregnancy. But I'm going to make it up to you, I promise, Charlotte. I'll take you shopping, buy you a brand new doll, and we can go to that lovely ice cream parlour, and you can have as much ice cream as you want. Now, won't that be nice?" I shook my head vigorously.
"I don't want to come back with you, Mrs. Araminter. You're not my mummy anyway. I belong here, home with my daddy and my sister."
"Now, there's no need to be like that, Charlotte. You don't want to live in this dreadful place. Look at it. It's so tiny in here, and the furniture doesn't even match. I mean, we live in such a large red-bricked home, and you have a beautiful bedroom with a princess carriage bed."
"Well, you've heard her, Mrs. Araminter. You've had your answer. My daughter does not want to come home with you. She wants to stay with us. She's my daughter legally. You don't have a leg to stand on, I'm afraid."
"We'll see about that," says Mrs. Araminter, storming out of the cabin. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers very soon. I'll be fighting you tooth and nail in court."
"You haven't got a leg to stand on, as I keep telling you, Mrs. Araminter,"
says my father, beginning to chuckle. In the weeks and months that followed, we never heard from the Araminters again. My daddy said it was because their lawyers would have told her that she had no legal grounds to claim me as her daughter, as there was no legitimate paperwork done at the time. Suffice to say, life was better in the cabin than ever before, as my father lavished his undivided love on me, as did my sister. So I began to realise how loved I was, and that it wasn't my fault that my mother had died during childbirth, so I wasn't a murderer after all, and that made me very happy indeed. One day I decided to seek Mr. Squirrel out, to tell him the great news, and that Miranda, my doll, had miraculously come back to life, because I knew how upset he'd been to hear my story. I wanted to tell him I'd got it all wrong, but the problem was all the squirrels in the woodgrove looked exactly the same. How would I know which was the squirrel who was so sad? I decided to talk to all of them, so one late afternoon I wandered off into the woodgrove and spoke to every squirrel I encountered, and there were lots and lots of them.
"I just want you to know that I'm not a murderer, because I didn't really kill my mummy, and I also wanted you to know that Miranda, my dog, has literally come back to life again. She's no longer dead," I told the squirrels. They seemed happy to hear my news, as they ate their acorns and looked at me through their dark, sultry eyes. I knew that they understood what I was saying, as they kept nodding their heads when they were eating. Mr. Squirrel would feel much better now that he knew the truth, and would no longer be sad. I suddenly became very scared, as in a trice the woodgrove became quite dark, and I couldn't find my way back home. I couldn't actually remember the way I'd come, and I knew I was lost, so I sat under the tree to cry again. And then I saw the hairy lady again. I was so relieved to see her. She always made me feel so much better. She knew what to do when I was sad. I was surprised to see that her stomach was very big. I knew she must be carrying a baby. She pointed to her belly and put my hand on her stomach to feel it. I could feel something kicking inside. It made me happy. I noticed her breasts were not small any more. They'd grown like two big balloons that had blown up for a birthday party. My hairy friend looked so happy. She held me in her arms and rocked me for a while. And then she put me on her back again, and we went riding through the woodgrove. I was so excited because I was having another ride again, and I hadn't seen her for so long. It was good to see her again, and it felt like I was riding a horse, but only it was smooth without those awful bumpy jolts. I thought she'd take me to the man who looked like Father Christmas again, but I was surprised to see she knew where I lived and took me straight home to my cabin. When my daddy opened the door to see me sitting on her shoulders, he looked visibly shocked, very, very confounded. I thought his eyes would drop out of his face as they grew so large, and his mouth was so big he could have caught a fly with it. The hairy lady put me on the ground and spoke to my dad in her language. My father understood the language because he nodded and said thank you very much. She nodded, patted me on the back, and glided away. My daddy was very excited about the hairy lady, telling my sister he'd never met such an extraordinary creature.
"She spoke to me in my head. She told me Meredith was lost."
"I wonder what she was?" my sister asked my dad. "She's the hairy lady," I explained, wondering why my father didn't know who she was. I was 16 years old, and one day singing in the church choir, Who should walk into the church but Mrs. Araminta herself, with her 8-year-old daughter, wearing a pink sweater, covered in pom-poms, and in her arms she was carrying Mr. Scotty. I could hardly believe it. The girl also had strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes and looked exactly like photographs I'd seen of the daughter that they'd had that died. "Charlotte!" she cries out to her daughter, who was running towards some leaves that had blown into the church. "Come back here right now!"
It was hard to believe she had called her new daughter Charlotte.
I felt sorry for the poor girl and wondered if she was being forced to like Mr. Scotty and to like chicken pot pie above every other food choice. I was to learn later on in life, when I was a lot older, that the hairy lady I encountered in the woodgrove was known as a Bigfoot. I hasten to say I did see her one more time, and that was when she knocked on our cabin door in the middle of the night. My father immediately grabbed his rifle when he heard the strange knocking sound, as we weren't used to being disturbed like this. Me and my sister ran to the door, curious to see what was going on, and there she was, standing in the full light of the moon. She looked beautiful, lofty, majestic, and in her arms she was carrying her baby and holding it up for my father to see. "She's beautiful," said my father, and the hairy lady showed my father that it wasn't a girl but a little boy, by pointing out his anatomy. "Oh, I apologize," said my father. "He is beautiful." The hairy lady's eyes gleamed, and she let my father and my sister hold her baby, while she sat down on the porch steps and rocked me in her arms. My father told me later she'd just given birth, and she and her partner were moving away, and she'd come to say goodbye. My father claimed she'd spoken to him in his head. I was sad because I never saw the hairy lady again, but even now as an older woman, I hold her memory so dearly in my heart. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.